In the summer of 2026, drivers across dozens of Russian regions found themselves waiting hours just to inch toward a gas pump. The lines grew so severely that cities in Siberia had to bring in portable toilets for the stranded drivers. All of this domestic rationing was happening inside a nation that operates as the third largest oil exporter on the planet. You might expect a domestic shortage of this scale to stem from OPEC production cuts, or perhaps Western economic sanctions directly squeezing the local market. Instead, the collapse was triggered by a fleet of cheap, long-range drones, built by a neighboring country with almost no conventional air force left to its name. These strikes entirely bypassed the front lines, flying deep into Russian territory to detonate right on Moscow's doorstep. By ignoring traditional battlefield trenches, the drone campaign managed to strike the most exposed organ of the Russian state, turning an external conflict into a highly visible, immediate domestic crisis. By June 2026, over 24 strikes had slammed into Russian refineries. That tally included 2 separate direct hits on the massive Kapotnya plant, which serves as the single biggest fuel supplier for Moscow. This chart shows exactly what that systemic damage looks like. A 17% drop in gasoline production occurred in a matter of months, taking roughly 850,000 barrels a day directly out of the domestic market. The issue here isn't a lack of raw materials. Russia has oceans of crude oil underground. But that crude is totally useless to a civilian car unless it goes through the highly complex surface infrastructure needed to turn it into usable gasoline. These refineries act as the ultimate bottleneck. They are highly specialized and highly combustible. If you break the bottleneck, the crude oil gets trapped with nowhere to go. These strikes exploited a specific logistical gap. While the raw oil is protected deep underground, the intricate, specialized machinery needed to process it remains out in the open and easy to target. Once those surface plants take a hit, a multiplier effect takes hold. Repairing a modern refinery requires precise engineering, meaning a severely damaged plant goes offline for months, not days. That process relies heavily on highly specialized foreign-made components. Because of existing Western sanctions, legally importing those replacement parts into Russia is nearly impossible, leaving facilities dark while engineers scramble for workarounds. Because repairs stalled, a logistical contagion spread across the country. Regions thousands of miles away from any drone strike, like Sakhalin in the Far East, suddenly ran completely out of gas. The Kremlin was forced into a humiliating corner. They banned the export of gasoline and jet fuel entirely, and the world's third largest oil exporter had to pivot to importing fuel from neighbors like Belarus. A localized, cheap tactical strike had successfully mutated into a nationwide logistical failure, forcing an energy superpower to beg for gasoline to keep its own cities running. But this graph shows a surprising twist. Despite domestic chaos, Russia's total overall oil processing only dropped by a few percent. Moscow averted total collapse by leaning on spare refining capacity in untouched regions, absorbing the blow to keep baseline numbers stable. If the physical volume of barrels largely recovered, did the drone campaign actually fail? The true damage didn't register in the oil volume, it registered in the economy. Constant repairs, logistical rerouting, and halted shipments caused oil and fuel export revenues to plummet to multi-decade lows. And then there is the domestic consequence. The state can control the television broadcasts, but censorship cannot hide the reality of a war from citizens sitting in a 4-hour line for an empty gas pump. This campaign used small, low-altitude flights to bypass layered air defenses, proving that traditional borders can no longer prevent strikes on critical industrial zones. The drone strikes forced a tangible domestic cost by eroding the Kremlin's illusion of normalcy. By turning a routine gas station trip into a 4-hour ordeal, the campaign made the friction of the war unavoidable for the average Russian citizen.